Hi, I'm Yves Scherer. We're at Amanita Gallery's Freeman alley space, where I'm showing work in a duo show with Sebastian Lloyd Rees. We wanted to create this sort of a street scene in a way, where there's like a group of figures, which are my sculptures, which gets paired with Sebastian's hoarding pieces. The way the show came together was sort of a last-minute project, but it was always clear that it would happen here at the Freeman alley space. And I think the Freeman alley space of Amanita Gallery has quite a particular aesthetic and sort of identity to it. It's sort of industrial, but it still has some sort of refinement. And I did have some of Sebastian's work, like some of the hoarding pieces I had here in New York, stored at my studio, because he used to have a studio here a couple of years ago. He used to share my studio, so I always had those works. And it's just somehow when the show came up, I thought it would be an interesting sort of position to bring together with my work. We wanted to do a show together for a long time. Sebastian's works are these wooden hoardings, which are sort of ready-made works which are taken off buildings, but then there's also some slight intervention by him in the work, and they sort of form a background or a contrast to a group of my sculptures in different materials. There's onyx works and there's some metal works. There's a dog sculpture in the show which is made in polished bronze. The title is Doggy, and I think it's what really to me makes the work feel like a work of mine is the little smile that the sculpture has in a way. So it's very simply like a sculpture of a peeing dog, very happily peeing dog. And in some way I kind of think sometimes about I have like a young daughter, and when I'm on a playground with her, I usually, when she has to pee, I usually take her into the bushes instead of the bathroom, and my wife always gets angry at me, but she really loves it and I also really love it. So I kind of feel like to me the dog sort of stands in for this joy of this little moment of transgression, or this just a joy in somehow maybe breaking the rules in a very slight way, and just this kind of this sort of freedom that this sort of brings or makes one feel in a way. Yeah, so the work behind me actually is called Goodnight Moon. It's a work in white onyx. To me, it's the woman in the show. So I would say there's like some male figures, there's a child, there's the dog, and then this is sort of the woman. It's a sort of very simplified figuration. It's this slender woman, and she has these sort of flowers in her dress. And to me, it's sort of just a kind of a poetic, almost prehistoric figuration, but also in some way has certain notes of like a Swiss, you could think about like this kind of Swiss folkloric figure that has just been like elongated in a way, which gives it more of almost like an existential element to it, or it reminds me a little bit of a Giacometti woman figure, like Woman of Venice. But with the white onyx, I feel like it's very nice with the slenderness, how it becomes almost translucent, like in the head, and how the veins run through it very sort of slightly. In terms of companions, I feel like there's multiple works in the show. Like each figure really is by itself, but then each figure also has, not each figure, but some of the figures have sort of companion or implied companions. So, for example, the smallest sculpture in the show, which is titled Lucy after my daughter, is made in pink onyx, and she's holding a baby, or like kissing her little doll, and I find it's quite heartwarming, this moment of tenderness in a way. But I also see that figure in some way, the way it's installed, that it's kind of paired with the largest figure in the show, which is sort of a guy, which is sort of me, and I kind of see them together, that he's kind of supporting her or protecting her in some way. So that's kind of part of the installation. Yeah, there's this figure called What If Eve Made Apple Juice, which is sort of off from the Kanye West song, but it's also obviously Eve, this sort of wordplay of Eve and Eve, the first woman, and with the apple anyway. So, but this is a sculpture made in painted aluminium, and it's a sort of this country boy, this Swiss country boy, like bending over and plucking flowers while there's like a cheeky cat on his back. Yeah, there's one figure on the wall exactly. It's a Johnny and Kate sculpture, I call it. It's a cast aluminum work, which is made after a photograph by Annie Leibovitz of Johnny Depp and Kate Moss when they were a couple. And I sort of added parts of the body, which on here it's sort of this laying figure, but it's installed on the wall. I mean, in general, I think if you install a figure onto the wall, it becomes a connotation of a crucifix because there's very little other figures which are ever hung to a wall. So I kind of like this element of that it almost becomes this crucifixion in some sort of way, but it's this kind of loving, tender moment. And I sort of like how it's in this street scene. You can imagine somehow like somebody making out on the corner of the street, or in Freeman out in the alley, somebody's this couple sort of making out pressed against the wall. Yeah, the largest work in the show is this hoarding piece by Sebastian, which is behind me. And to me, this is really what the show started with, and it's always been a real favorite work of mine. It's a big hoarding piece from, I think, 2014 or 2015, which is taken from London. And I've just always really liked how one can't really tell what exactly is found and where did the artist like interact with the work. And in general, I just like the physical presence of the work. I've always been, coming from a sculpture practice, I've always been interested in that aspect of Sebastian's work, that it really has a physical presence. You can feel the weight and just the materiality of it. But then at the same time, you have a work in the show, which is the other grey work on the other wall, also made out of this industrial material and the same sort of industrial paint, but it's really simple and super elegant. It has a very calm and refined aura around it, even though it's made out of, let's say, just plywood and some grey paint. I find it interesting how, in some way, they also like, especially with those, they draw you in more, and they don't really. In some way, you don't feel like that they kind of work against the sculpture, that they push against it, but they sort of give it almost like a cozy, warm embrace. Also in terms of the way the colors work together and how it's this warm wooden material. And I find it interesting also that that the sculptures have a very distinct materiality of, like, there's a polished sculpture, there's a patinated sculpture, and there's like stone sculpture and a painted sculpture. That this wooden element pairs with the sculptural materials, I think is what I really like about the show. It's a very material show in a way.